Ding dong, learning is here again. Hey guys, welcome to HipHughes History. In the next few minutes, we're going to engage with a vocabulary word that is just incredibly cool to say. Filibuster. Say it with me. Filibuster. One thing that I've heard from a lot of political people is kind of the complaint that Barack Obama controlled both houses of Congress when he was first elected, and he had a chance to solve all of the nation's problems because they held all the reins of power. And I think if you understand the filibuster, that sentence isn't exactly true. So let's take a look at a quick history of the filibuster. What the hell is it? A couple of examples, and then we'll leave it up to you, the people, to decide what should we do about the filibuster. Aaron Burr, it's your fault. Aaron Burr was the vice president for John Adams, and then he ran against Thomas Jefferson for presidency, and then when he lost, he kind of obscurely faded from American history. Of course, he did shoot Hamilton, so there you go. But when Aaron Burr was president of the Senate, remember that the vice president is president of the Senate, he removed one of the rules which allowed for the senators basically to vote in order to pass, to move legislation along. He thought it was unnecessary. So by removing that vote, which today we would call cloture, he kind of left an open spot for the filibuster to emerge. And what the filibuster really is the ability for one senator or a series of senators to stop a piece of legislation even when they're in the minority. So you would think you would need 51 votes to pass a law in the Senate, but with the filibuster, at different times in American history, you would need either 60 or 67 votes. So of course, this is a tremendous feat, and the minority has a tremendous amount of power with the filibuster. Why would we give them that power? Because we want to make sure that the minority voice is heard. And originally, the filibuster was really not used all that often. It was seen as an extraordinary measure to be used in extraordinary times. So let's take a quick look at the use of the filibuster before we get into the modern era. The filibuster was first used, I believe, in 1837, but more importantly in 1841 by William King, who successfully filibustered Henry Clay, a senator from Kentucky's, attempt to recharter the National Bank. And then the filibuster kind of, is put away, not used for a long, long time, and then it's taken back out by a group of Republican senators going against Woodrow Wilson's attempt to lead a law being passed which would have armed merchant ships in response to unrestricted submarine warfare that was being done by the Germans back then before the United States entry into World War I. And Woodrow Wilson was like, yo, this ain't cool. So he, having a vice president, led the attempt to redefine the rules and really invoking cloture for the first time and kind of shutting that down so they could pass that law. And then it's 1930s, 1940s, 1950s, 1960s in extraordinary ways. In the 30s, it was Huey Long, who was a leftist, and he would read Shakespeare on the floor. In the 1940s, there was an attempt to, by white Democratic Southerners, these are going to be the predominant group that are going to filibuster. I believe first it was for an equal opportunity board to get rid of discrimination in jobs. In the 1950s, Strom Thurmond holds the record for 24 hours, I believe in 8 minutes, where he tried to filibuster the 1957 Civil Rights Act, and then the 1964 Civil Rights Act by Senator Robert Byrd from West Virginia and a group of other white Democratic Southern senators to stop that 1964 Civil Rights Act. So it's extraordinary when it was used. I mean, it's literally like bring out the cots and nobody's going home. And Jimmy Stewart, man, if you've ever watched this movie, watch this movie. It's Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, and I think I could put a link down there for you. But it's a really great movie where Jimmy Stewart is kind of like this, like a clean-cut senator who's put into the position, and he's going to reform everything. And when he finds out how greedy and grafty everything is in Washington, he tries to filibuster, and he stands up there, and he talks, and he collapses on the Senate floor, and they dump the mailbag on him, and yeah, that's the filibuster. Not anymore. Mike Mansfield, it's your fault. Robert Byrd, it's your fault. What these two guys, these two cool cat senators did in the early 1970s was they defined the Senate legislation process as being two-track, which means that you can filibuster something on one track and stop that from happening. But at the same time, the business of the Senate can continue on the other track. So the days of Jimmy Stewart standing up there and talking endlessly don't have to happen anymore. You can just basically threaten a filibuster. In 1975, we went to 60 as a way to shut down the filibuster, 60 for cloture, but still to have a 2/3 majority, which would be 67, in order to change the rules to redefine the filibuster. And this is where it gets complicated. Some constitutional scholars believe you can use budget reconciliation to override and go through a filibuster. The vice president has the ability, some constitutional scholars believe, to redefine how the filibuster is used. This is called the nuclear option, and it was thrown around a little bit when Dick Cheney was vice president in regards to Democratic senators who were stopping Republican nominees in the federal judge arena. And then this was kind of broken and stopped from happening by a gang of 14, 7 Democratic senators, 7 Republican senators who came together and kind of worked through that on their own. But today, the filibuster seems to be what is done all the time. If you look at the chart behind me, cloture is used not only when there's a real filibuster, but when there's a threat of filibuster. Cloture is basically saying, moving on, next, and you need 60 votes to do that. So you could see, the chart behind me by by 2000, 2004, 2006, the number of clotures are just skyrocketing. So the point of all this, guys, is you need 60 votes to pass anything in the Senate. And right now, the Democrats, I think, have 53 or 54, and even under the best circumstances, they had 59 when Obama was in there, and you need 60 to do anything. So, tell me what you think. Do you think that we should get rid of the filibuster? Should we go back to the days of Jimmy Stewart, maybe where you have to stand up there and collapse? I'd love to see a senator collapse as long as they healed quickly. Or do you think it's the way it's supposed to be, that this is checks and balances? And I'm sure there's a lot of libertarians out there who believe that, it should be really hard to pass laws, because every time you pass a law, the size of the government's getting bigger. So any check and balance, any limit we can put on federal power, that's a good thing. But I want to know what you think, because that's the kind of guy that I am. So subscribe now. If you click Noam Chomsky, you'll go right to my subscription page, and you'll be like the happiest person ever. So there you go, guys. Where attention goes, energy flows. The filibuster.